what was the first thought that crossed your mind when you heard the words that you are diagnosed with cancer?
Yes, there's a tumor or there is something, there's a growth, and if it is vascular, it is malignant.
Were there also days when it felt very heavy still emotionally, and then how did you sort of pull yourself back to the rhythm?
Purpose in our life is very big and very important.
You used a very nice phrase saying, I made cancer my friend.
Actually, I would really look at it as a mentor or a teacher.
What is that daily ritual that helped you to, sort of stay afloat?
Cancer is cancer. And everybody's journey is different.
What is it that we should look for or, create hope?
Just never give up. Yesterday was history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why we call it a present.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Odd Socks. Today's conversation is not one story, but these are the experiences that are lived by a remarkable woman. A woman who learned to make peace with cancer, who did something bold. She made cancer her friend. Uh, and who ultimately chose not to fight illness, but to live it with joyfully. This episode belongs to Dolly, a dear friend, a wonderful human being, and most importantly, always a smiling person and giving hope. So, welcome, Dolly, and thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you, Anil, and wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So, let's go back to that moment, to that diagnosis. What was the first thought that crossed your mind when you heard the words that you are diagnosed with cancer?
So for me, it didn't come as one declaration. I had gone for a routine checkup, and I think now, in retrospect, when I see how lacking our medical system is. Our medical doctor, all that is fine, but patient care is really. So I'll just share. So I went for a regular checkup. So when my ultrasound was happening, the radiologist who was doing my checkup, she got into a panic. Oh, I can't see your left ovary. Where's the left ovary? And she's poking me there. And her panic started building up. So I'm getting that. And then she starts saying, and now that much some of us know, that when you use the word vascular, right, it means, yes, there's a tumor or there is something, there's a growth. And if it is vascular, it is malignant. Because it's feeding it. I mean, this is like very lay person's knowledge which I had earlier. Because I've seen a lot of friends
And you
family.
stumbled on it by chance. It's like that's what it looks like.
Yeah. It was just on an instinct that I went, and I normally would go for my annual checkups, but that time I just 3-4 years I was shifting house, didn't go. But that time I said, okay, just let's go. So that I was asymptomatic completely. And so anyway, so then she said vascular, and then the minute with her reaction, her words, my panic started building. So that's how I realized. And then in the end, when she still couldn't figure out, she called her senior person, and the senior person told me, and I was all alone. My husband dropped me.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a
So Sudhir was
regular
not with
checkup.
you. Yeah.
No. This was regular checkup. So I was dropped. The hospital he went to, this is Manipal, his office in Domlur. He said, okay, I'll come and pick you up later. So then I called him. And then by that time, I was already in a state. And well, that's how I got to know. When I was absolutely on my own. And that was very, what can I say? For want of a better word, tough.
So at that point, Dolly, what what felt like way forward? How did you transition into that? What next?
So I think one very big factor in my life and my journey here was the fact that I had very, very good support, whether it's from my family, whether it's from friends and doctors. So the minute this happened and we came home, we have a very, very senior uh, uh, pediatrician in the city who looked after Anya. That's my daughter. And he's become a friend. So he's our go-to person. So this has happened, now what should I do? And he will point us in the right direction. So when we started that, then it was almost like, you just have to go ahead one step at a time and do what needs to be done. So there was not much time to think. So both me and my husband, we got into that mode. Okay, now this has happened. Now we got here. Now we have to do this appointment, that appointment, this. So, it went step by step, just addressing what was uh, in front of us at that time. And I think that became the rhythm of my entire
Journey in
journey.
some
And
sense.
not just the first time, even when I had my recurrence.
Mm. But then I'm sure there were days when, while you were making sort of peace with it, taking practical steps and some actions, were there also days when it felt very heavy still emotionally? And then how did you sort of pull yourself back to the rhythm?
So of course it would be because, and my daughter was 12 years old at that time. She was away on a school trip. So my first thought was that, will I see her when she comes back? And this was a long school trip of three weeks, and I was going to have my surgery without seeing her. So in a way, it was good, but so that was very hard. So that became so where during it was like two sides of the same coin. So on one hand, you're going ahead and doing what you need to do, take the next steps. And the other part was like in the back of the mind, it's like the background music which plays that, this is going to happen. I may not see her. I have to go for my surgery. But I think with that happening, uh, all my family, Sudhir, my friends, they actually rallied around me. So I got a lot of, so yes, of course, there were many, many episodes of fear. And more than fear, also two things. One is fear of the unknown, the uncertainty. And the other thing is I've had a lot of very close, in fact, I lost my closest friend to cancer. So I've seen it at very close quarters. So I've seen how devastating it can be, so one was in a way oscillating between different emotions. Like the mind goes between 10,000, I don't know what science says,
Yeah.
50,000 thoughts in a minute or
Yeah,
whatever.
about 1.4 million. Something.
Thoughts, some suggestion, there's some
Some thoughts
calculation there.
that
Yeah.
keep on coming.
Yeah. So that emotions also were there, maybe not that much, but so, so there were many, of course, there were many moments.
Mm. But was there any dilemma, because the person that I know of is like always very strong fighter, coming out strongly. Was that a challenge to live up to that image on days, because people surrounded also expect you to be like, living to that angry young man or fighting all the time,
No, no. I think for me, people around me didn't expect, I don't think there was any kind of expectation on me, expectation for being a fighter, because what they saw was a fighter. And when I'm saying fighter, I really mean that actually it's very interesting. I have spent my life really breaking rules, breaking norms, breaking social traditions and everything.
traditions. Yeah.
So I've actually have been a fighter.
That's that.
But
Yeah.
this time
Yeah.
round, it was like, I don't know, it was it was like a kind of a leveling which happened. It's like something has happened which I cannot with um it's not that I have something control. I don't have control over that. Like I don't know what the outcome will be, and I don't know how much of control I'm going to have over the outcome. I only have control over my behavior and my responses. And here I'd like to really share that I practice Nichiren Daishonen's Buddhism, and I've been practicing this since 92. So that's a good many years. So I was about 25 years into my practice when I encountered this. And I think it's the years of practice the years of doing Daimoku, the Buddhist study, all that was just theory became like a living entity in my own life. So suddenly those concepts came to
Came
life,
to life and became sort of real,
part of me.
part of you. Yeah.
So I used to chant a lot, I used to pray a lot. And, for us, purpose in our life is very big and very important. Purpose as bodhisattvas. So in that context, we have seniors in faith who guided me. So I think slowly, once I, the boat which was rocking so much started stabilizing. And with the affection, the support of friends, family, husband, daughter, and my practice, and fellow practitioners, seniors, and then my own prayer, my study, I think that started stabilizing me.
I remember when we were talking about this episode preparation, you used a very nice phrase saying, I made cancer my friend. Talk a little bit more about that, because the stabilizing thing has a direct linkage to making it so it's not so much of a like acceptance, but living with it with joy or hope. And I remember you were mentioning that phrase has stayed with me.
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking more about it, I would say that it's not that I really looked at cancer as a friend, now that I'm thinking, but rather as a co-traveler.
That's a very nice phrase. Yeah.
But more like a co-traveler. So it's like something which is with me, it's going along with me, and what is it that I can do? So it's like the only way to, when you're in a tough situation, to get over is to go through it. So for me, it became a thing that I have to go through this.
And this is much more than acceptance.
It's
It
much,
is yeah.
so it started like this. And I think acceptance was also a, a part of it. Maybe it came later, but very much a part of it. Because it is what it is. In fact, that's my takeaway from this whole thing. Like, as in life, for any of us, right? And see, today, uh, cancer has become more widespread, but so has medicine become more advanced. So you do see a lot of cancer survivors today, right? And I think
And there's a lot more awareness, lot
a
more
lot more awareness.
openness to talk
Yes,
about it as well. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you do see a lot more people with cancer and a lot more survivors.
Yes.
But I think there's one challenge as a survivor. What I feel is that, yes, I mean, and maybe I'm just jumping a few steps ahead, but it's like, um, you're going through something, you can do your best and you have good support, etc., etc., etc. And now that I've come out of it, like it's 6.5 years since my recurrence and almost 9 years since my first diagnosis now. But the lesson has not gone away, right? The lesson that at the end of the day, I am vulnerable. Yes. Right? We all know anything can happen to anybody. But when you experience it firsthand so closely, so it is like the sword of Damocles over your head. So even today, of course, it's not that I live all the time with this on my head, or I mean, in my thoughts, but well, that is what it is, and we don't know. So you are in a more vulnerable stage of being at one level,
At one
a
level.
little more vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about this co-traveler, co-passenger. Um, so when you look at this co-traveler, how would you define it? Is it a friend? Is it a strict teacher? Is it a mirror? How would you look at that fellow traveler or a passenger? What vivid image would you give it?
Actually, I would really look at it as a mentor or a teacher.
Mental
Mentor,
mentor.
mentor.
Okay.
Actually, okay, let's say teacher,
Teacher. Yeah.
because I think uh, Like I said earlier, just before this, we were talking about being vulnerable,
Yes.
right? So, all the wise people who have come before us across philosophies, across religions, you talk about impermanence, you talk about detachment, you talk about so many things, right? At the core, a lot of philosophies say the same thing, right? But when you experience something like this, when you experience the imminence of your own mortality, uh, then it's like you understand the meaning of impermanence. You understand, and that gives rise to something like detachment. And detachment at a level even from my own life. So, very often I would have this very strange experience as if I'm outside myself and I'm looking. All this is happening to somebody else. Sometimes I would get that kind of a feeling.
I do experience that as well. I do
Ah,
not know whether. So I was thinking it is only happening to me,
no, no.
but now you're telling me it looks like it's like a normal thing to experience.
Yeah. So or maybe it's a defense mechanism or whatever, I don't know. So, coming back to that co-traveler bit. So, learning these things became very, very important to me. And I think also it taught me, like we were saying earlier, that I was a fighter. I've broken social norms, taboos. I've reinvented myself work-wise here, there. I've done a lot of all of that. So always, but this time it's like, yes, I have the energy to do all of that. But I still, now, it was like there is something which is beyond me. So in a way, it also levels you, humbles you, you know, that yes, we can do our best, but there is something which is beyond us.
Mm. I think what I really liked. I mean, of course, one has learned a lot stories about cancer survivors and everything. But the way you have personified it as a co-traveler or as a friend, I think this is very inspiring because, and it's not so much of an acceptance that you have to live with it, but it is more like, let's see what we can make out of it.
Yeah,
I
correct.
think.
So you're saying what it has taught me, I'll just add to that,
Mm.
is it has taught me this. I mean, when you have death here, it's actually taught me the meaning and value of life. So all the wise people who have said things before us actually starts making sense. And I think at one level, if I look back, it may sound strange, but I think cancer was the best thing that happened to me. I
But
just
that's a
feel,
very bold statement that
yeah,
you just
yeah, but
made.
I
I
will
mean,
say
like,
that.
yeah,
I will really say that
yeah.
because it's like living in the moment, truly being more respectful to people around you, and just trusting. Trusting the unknown, trusting the fearsome. And because earlier, I was a doer, achiever, do this, do that. It was always like in my head. That I think really changed. That really changed for me. So I would say, I don't know, but I think I've become a better person.
Of course, you are, because there are many, like, and as part of our normal conversations, whenever we talk about you, and that's what I said in the beginning also of the podcast, that you're a very inspiring example, uh, from a perspective that you have won over this thing and yet not defeated. So, that is something which not very many people have. Like I read somewhere, it's not the disease that people are scared of, it is the thought itself that scares people. And although I can only sort of empathize or maybe understand, but when it happens, then it is a completely different thing altogether. And like you were talking about the impermanence of life, I was reading somewhere, it says that there is no life outside the present moment. So, and that becomes so live that the present moment is the only one that we have, and it all depends how we want to either live with it or let it just go.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that, again, like I was saying, I practice Nichiren Buddhism. So my mentor, Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, in all the guidance that I had read, across these 25 years talks about, like, the present moment is the only thing. The person you are with now is the most important person. What you do now is the most. So that is, I think, somewhere in us, my subconscious, and for a lot of people who practice, I know this is the same thing. I'm not unusual in this. For a lot of us, this has become, it really got ingrained somewhere in my life. And it's like, you know, when you need it, you've got that
You've got
lifeline.
that lifeline. That's
The
true.
raft appears.
Yes, yes, yes,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
So
So in a
living in
way,
this present becomes very important, and which reminds me of Kung Fu Panda. I think the first version,
yes, yes,
which says yesterday was history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift.
is a gift.
That's why we call it a present.
That's why we call it a present. I remember that's one of my favorite scene in
It's
that
beautiful.
movie, and part of it you have already answered. But what is that daily ritual that helped you to, you know, sort of stay afloat, like what you were mentioning, during that time and now? Because of course, human mind is like keeps on coming back to the thoughts that we have experienced. But what is that one ritual that sort of helps you apart from your Buddhist practice?
Hmm. Self-care. Self-care was a big one for me. Because, like I said, where I felt inadequate and ineffective against the bigger picture, this is one thing I had control over. So I had control over my diet. So I did my research of what food is good for cancer, and doctors also advise, and little more research one did. So over my diet, over post chemo care, looking after myself in terms of just oiling myself, taking care, uh, binge watching Friends.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I would just switch off. And in a way, maybe during the treatment time, maybe I was just in a way living in a bubble, despite having so much of support and affection and from all friends and family. And I think that's true for all of us. But for me, especially at that time, it was as if I was living in my bubble. Not that I wasn't aware of people around me. I was interacting, and I didn't isolate myself. Yes, that's one thing I didn't. I think that also helped. Yes. So, if friends wanted to drop in, I said, I love you. Please come over. So, whether I had hair, I didn't have hair, I was maybe just a day or two after the chemos when I would feel a little nauseous and would sleep really. But if I could be awake, I would have probably met them also. But I think I didn't isolate myself. So, self care, I did not isolate myself, and I participated. I would go to parties as well. Yeah. So, initially, I used to have caps. After that, no, I would go bald. I would go bold. I would go bald and bold.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, that's a nice one. I
Oh,
think
that just came up.
I think when we publish this podcast, and if you have some pictures of that,
I do.
so it'll be great to sort of.
And in fact, a very interesting thing came up, because a very close friend of my husband's, who's now, I mean, all of us are very fond of him and we are close to him. He is naturally bald. So he and his wife, they came over to spend time with us during one of after my chemo episodes. So when he came and he sat down to me, next to me, I looked at him and I said, same to same. And we actually have a picture of both our heads together.
I think that'll be great to have that picture as part of this this podcast.
And one more thing. So therefore, if you're saying what kept me for self-care, um, not being isolated, and connecting with people, and also humor. Humor kept me afloat. So this was good humor and also had some dark humor. So like one day, not immediately after my chemos, but I think my maid didn't come. There was nobody. And I think Anya had gone to college. And she was 12 years old when I was first diagnosed. So there were some dishes in the kitchen and I was washing them. So my husband walks in and he says that, hey, what are you doing? Then I looked at him and said, I don't have a cold. I don't have fever. I only have cancer.
Yeah.
So I can wash dishes.
Yeah.
He was like so taken
Yeah.
aback, and
That's
so
a
little
that's a
dark
real
humor.
fighter in you spoke. It's like
Yeah, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah.
So also
But I think these are very important lessons to look at self care. Otherwise, people, think that, oh, now I have this, and what's the use of connecting with people or
So I must
humor?
share one more thing. So on this self-care, I actually have a document, which goes from diet to even prayers. Prayers, when I say, not about the prayer that I do, any prayer that you do, believe, faith, hope, because hope comes from there, right? And maybe small things in terms of food here, there, whatever. So I actually have a document, and I have shared it with so many friends and family who have had cancer post me. And I said, look, I did all of this. You pick and choose what you want to do, what works for you, right? And it has helped so many people.
In fact, Dolly, this is one of the reason that why I started this podcast, because you use the word hope, and I read somewhere it says, although it's the smallest word, but it's the most powerful word. And all of us are looking either hope or validation in our life. And through stories like yours, and many others, those who will come on this podcast, basically to talk about that this is the hope that we all have in our life, and we can build from whatever life throws on us. So thank you for sharing this, because I'm sure this document is much more helpful to many people, those who are either experiencing or have experienced it.
Yes. So when I met one of my oncologists, because across the first diagnosis and the recurrence, when I met him, I told him about this thing, and he said, "Will you share it with me?" And I've shared it with him. So he shares it with his people.
Yeah.
So little tips, and so it's
Yeah. No, but I think these are important things which you said: self-care, humor, and connecting with people, dark humor including, and then writing a document which talks about, which also helps you to reflect that what is it that the journey that you are on.
But I also want to take just a moment to say that, cancer is cancer.
Mm.
Mm. And everybody's journey is different. So even with my story, there could be a person who's really right now struggling a lot. You know, Maybe one or two things may resonate, but a lot may not, because the situation is very different.
In fact, that was my question to you, that what is the sort of sharing that you would like to do? As you rightly said, everybody's journey is different. But what is it that we should look for, or create hope when somebody hears about it for the first time in their own life?
I would just say, just never give up. You know, I think we get defeated when we give up. And I do feel, in my case also, I did not give up. And maybe having a young child and making that extra effort initially was for her sake. And then maybe it became just a part of how I was dealing with it.
Yeah.
But I think, like, there are many survivors, there are many people who also succumb to cancer. So this is not about, being an inspiration and ho, we can do it. No, definitely I don't see it like that at all. I just feel, for all of us who have gone through, who are going through, just do your best in the present moment now. It is what it is, and whatever is in our hands, do your best and just keep the faith.
Mm. I think these are very important things, Dolly, because one, you said, you know, it is what it is, but live in the present moment. Also detach, like you were talking about, that you look at yourself separately, and then you say, I'm not going to let this impact me as a person, because it definitely is easier said than done. But these are very important aspects of, um, not only accepting but winning over and dealing with it, and that is a very important part. What is the role of, although you touched about it, uh, how did your friends and your families played a role?
I mean, brilliant. Can't even begin to say how brilliant. So whether it was neighbors or family, of course, with my husband Sudhir and Anya, so they were there all the time. And But interestingly, especially when I was after my surgery, when I was in the hospital for about 6, 7 days, I was so conscious that I wanted Anya and Sudhir to have a normal life, a normal routine. So they would visit me in hospital, but they would go back. I had a roster. I mean, what bigger blessing? I had a roster of friends, family, and my sisters in faith who literally would come to me and be with me in the hospital morning, night, round the clock. So I don't think, no. So they didn't even have to stay one night in the hospital with me, and nor did Anya. And I didn't want it. Because, you know, it was like one dealing with myself and one dealing with the bigger picture. Would also think that if something happens, then their life should continue. So in that level, that detachment I had started at, I don't know what the outcome would be. No, I mean, when I'm going through it, I just don't know the outcome. But that's the kind of blessing. So, and every time I had a chemo, the 6 cycles, right? Both times I had 6 cycles. Every time I had a chemo cycle, I have, again, big blessings. I have a group of friends who I've grown up with, my school friends. 3, 4 of the every time I had a thing, especially the times when it was difficult, the latter part of the chemos, they would come fly in from ever Calcutta here there, and they would just be with me, and they would come spend time with me and then go away. So I mean, it was like the environment was uh, just amazing. And again, I don't know, I just want to keep stopping and just saying that it, I don't want it to sound like a fairy tale. You know, there's nothing
It is not.
glamorous. There is nothing glamorous
Yes,
about.
it is not. I mean, although
I say it with a lot of humbleness, humility, and with a lot of prayer for all the people who have lost their lives to cancer as well. In fact, during my chemos, I remember I would walk into the hospital to get my chemos done. And the first time I went, there were small children. So I spent my time chanting for them. I mean, it's devastating. It can be devastating completely. So this has been my journey so far. Well, and I'm grateful for it. I relish it. I relish this life that I've been given, the second lease that I've been given. But you know, and like you had asked, what are your lessons? So one is that definitely living in the present. And I don't know how much of it is scientific or not, but I had read somewhere that people who are very negative, because negative thoughts and anger and all creates acidity in the body, and that creates, which is, yeah, but I really don't think there's much, because there's wonderful calm people who, I believe Ramana Maharishi had died with cancer.
yes,
I think so.
I have read.
Yeah. So that's not there. But that time I was going to clutch at anything to be better, right? So I consciously tried to keep negative thoughts out of my mind. So my learning has been, I mean, it's tough. I will slip back. I'll go up, I'll slip back, and I keep slipping back. But to live in the present and to live lightly, to really live lightly,
Lightly meaning what? Like
lightly,
detachment, or is it something else?
everything.
Okay.
Ultimately, you know, while I was going through my chemos, I started making a list of all the um, paintings that I have bought. Some of them I didn't have certificates from the original. And the original, some of them are valuable. Not very valuable, but valuable enough. So putting that together, because let me put my papers in order. Na? I should clean my mess before I go. Why leave it for anybody else to do? So, those kind of things. So to live lightly, so to do what needs to be done, and don't sweat the small stuff. Very difficult, because but temperament, I'm passionate, so become, but then, like practice makes perfect.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Hopefully, just
No,
like
it does. It does.
your muscles, in
Your
the gym,
muscle
they
builds.
tear.
Yeah, correct.
After they tear in the gym, then they get
Then
stronger.
they get
So I
stronger.
think this whole thought process, this whole journey, at one level, makes you vulnerable also. So I think in my whole journey, there are both aspects. So you feel more vulnerable, but at the same time, you feel stronger. I face this now. Now what? What more than this?
I think that's a very powerful statement to make, that because you were mentioning that you've seen death like so close. What else can sort of defeat the spirit of it? Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much, Dolly, for your truth, your calmness, depth, and of course the extraordinary courage. It has been very, very inspiring, very, very inspiring. And to everyone listening, I just wanted to say that strength does not lie always. It does not roar always. Sometimes it finds peace. Sometimes it makes friends with fear. And sometimes it simply learns to live. So, this was Dolly's extraordinary journey with cancer. And thank you for listening. Stay gentle with yourself. And I'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil.